Jason,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy and much more famous than anybody here, that's for sure.
I beg to differ.
My first question is, you're the reason that Lauren didn't go to Paris?
Yeah, I hate to say it. Yes, you're right. I am. I am the reason why.
So I got to confess and just say, I really don't know what that means.
Okay, fair enough.
You know what I mean? But we have a good prep team. So
Yeah,
I was
I like
told that I
that.
have to lead off with this
I know
question.
you got all the box sets.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Seen every episode. You and your family
Yes.
recently moved here to Tennessee. How long y'all been here?
We are approaching 2 years, which is crazy to think of how fast this has flown by.
Yeah.
We absolutely love it. We came out here for a more wholesome lifestyle and just to change the scenery, get out of the riffraff and the, just the keeping up with the Joneses in Orange County. Again, love Orange County. Got 22 family members that are still there, but I had young kids, still have young kids, and we thought like, hey, if we're ever going to make this shift and try to do something like this, we should do it now so we don't uproot them. And it's been working incredible. Kids are thriving, wife is thriving, and honestly, I mean, the beautiful part about that is that, and when you do something like that, you pick up and move across the country, and leave all that family behind. It really provides an opportunity for you to grow a lot stronger within your marriage. And that's been a big blessing. Again, there's trials and tribulations that go along with that, but anything worth having is not easy. And so,
that's right.
We made that move. And again, a big testament to that is even why we're here is, through sobriety and being able to be in a place to be able to make decisions like that. Any form of active addiction for me would not been able to make a decision to move across the street, let alone across the country. So, it's very grateful. And we love it here. Give you a side note real quick, because actually my mom's whole family's from Tennessee, so there's roots here. Mom was born in Memphis. Grandparents grew up off of Moore's Lane in Brentwood, and then I have great aunts and stuff that live in Timms Ford and Clarksville. And
coming home then.
Coming home, man. Coming home.
Is this where your wife's from?
No, my wife is from Northern California.
Okay, all right. So big change for her.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a believer that relationships are built, not found.
Yep, 100%.
And you got to keep building.
Correct.
Right? And
Correct.
so I'm curious as to what, moving from California to Tennessee, it is a big change, here in Nashville. I mean, it's a big little city.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
And you have everything that you need, but you can also drive 20 minutes outside of town, just 20 minutes outside of town.
Correct.
And be in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
and have access to those green spaces and places. And what was the biggest challenge for you and your family kind of making that jump?
I think the biggest challenge, like as a whole, was leaving the family behind because for me,
network.
It's not only that, but I just grew up in a very, very, parents who celebrated 50 years of marriage last year, and just we're very, very close. Every Sunday we'd get together at barbecues, watch football.
Yeah.
And so there's 22 of us that lived within a very, very close proximity of each other, and so leaving that behind was the most challenging. But coming over here, we have some friends and we've known some people that have been over here for quite some time, and even having family. I think coming over here, there wasn't a huge challenge. I think we came over here just with no expectation, it was awesome because if we don't like it,
that's right.
We can move back.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I almost went through a grieving process, after that first year. I'm like, dude, we're not going, because you have to understand, my wife flew out here with her mom, the kids. I was following the movers, and I'm out here with my dog driving through like New Mexico, and I'm like, dude, what am I doing? Like, why am I moving to Tennessee?
Yeah.
Lo and behold, like I said, I had this grieving process of like, we're not going back.
Yeah.
Which is challenging because parents are, that are 70 and, they're, again, 70 is the new 50, but it's, you can see them just aging and not seeing them on as often is challenging. And so we've been more intentional about having more trips of them coming out and us going back and, planning that because, for me, there's the three most important things in life out of God and sobriety is family is one of those. So,
yeah. And sometimes I've moved a lot in my life too, and what I've learned is that change is constant, And so sometimes what I've thought about of where I lived before changes, almost immediately after you leave, and you go back and you say, "Man, this is interesting because I envision it as always the same. Right?
Well, it's the perspective you get when you go, it's funny. You leave Nashville, people playing the guitars in a good mood, and you land in LAX, and it's just a different vibe, man.
So what do your kids love the most about Nashville?
My kid, I mean, my 2-year-old, I think it's too young for him to kind of express exactly what it is that he loves the most. But my daughter, it's seeing her outdoors. I mean, and I think just playing and scraping up her knees and being a kid, you know what I mean? And that was one of the things that I feel like was taken away just from where we were. It was, again, and I'm not saying, I don't want to make this like a bashing session about that, but just our perspective on the stuff that we were witnessing just wasn't conducive to what we wanted to see for our kids. And, I'd say just being outdoors, the freedom, and really embracing that, riding bikes, having Power Wheels and running around with friends, playing tag, hide and go seek.
Catching bugs.
You literally catching lightning bugs and mason jars and just things that she wouldn't have experienced there that I know that she's just very, very happy about. And, she has her moments where she's like, I miss the water, or I miss certain friends or certain family. But, she really, my daughter who's 6, she absolutely loves it here.
Yeah. Talk to me about, how long have you been in recovery, Jason?
Jeez, man, that's a loaded question. I've been around recovery or in some way, shape, or form since I was 18. I'm 36 now. Really entered into recovery like July 23rd, 2010. That's when I really got sober and dedicated my life to making a shift. And then
congratulations.
Thank you. But then I went back out for a couple of years. And then re-entered back in December. I'll have 4 years in December.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Congrats. It's hard work.
Yeah. It's, Yep. That is, you can say that again for sure.
But at one point, there is this moment in recovery, in my experience, I'm not sure if you can identify, but it's where you stop running away from the disease and you start running towards recovery.
Yeah.
And it's a mind shift and it's a posture of your heart that begins to adjust a little bit towards, hey, I'm going to start chasing the things that, fill my soul up versus whatever problems I was having in my marriage or in my job or got a couple DUIs or whatever it is. And that is a beautiful part of what recovery gives us is much more than just what you hear people say, a new way of life, but really it changes the fabric of your character and those lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise.
No, it really does. And I think like one of the most beautiful things I ever heard around recovery or, sobriety as a whole, or even as addiction, it's like, you're willing to give up one thing to have everything, or you're willing to let me say that again. It's you're willing to give, you're willing to sacrifice everything for one thing, right? Or are you willing to give up one thing to have everything,
right?
And I think that was kind of it was when I heard that, it really resonated and hit home. And I think through that process, what I found that was the most beneficial and or helpful is once I really identified that structure and consistency creates safety, and I got into that. I'm a person that really thrives on structure.
Me too.
And
Love structure.
It took a long time, and because one of my biggest triggers was chaos, right? And and I don't like being out of control. And but once I started to figure out that stuff, and I started to identify what was most beneficial for me, right? Because in active addiction, you lose so much sight of who you are and what it even means. What are your priorities? What are the things that you like? And so once you're growing and developing and you actually start to reap the benefits from it, that's what becomes a motivational component for you to keep going.
I appreciate what you said about control. And if you don't mind, I'd like to dive a little deeper into that with you and your experience. We don't like to be out of control.
Yeah.
Right. Which some people might assume would be the opposite of what's true, right?
Very contradicting to the behaviors that come with it.
So can you speak about that? Any insights you've learned in recovery about the nature of control in your life?
Yeah, I mean, for somebody that was so out of control, you know what I mean? Like just the most unaccountable person, and I just I look at when I was in my active disease, I just lost passion and hope for everything that I liked, you know what I mean? And so everything literally was decimated. It was out of control versus being in control and having, being somebody that is accountable and somebody that is a good friend, that is a good husband, that is there. And I think having that in control, it's it was a new perspective because again, when you're in it, you don't realize until you make that shift and get out and kind of can take a look back. I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, I kind of take that into control of perspective of just what I'm able to contribute and be an active member in society today.
Yeah. Control is all, my experience with control is all about safety.
Yeah.
You know, like not wanting to be, I want to be in control because it's safe.
Yeah.
You know, because I can predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
To make sure that my needs will be met. Because at the core of who I am, I'm scared that you're going to reject me, or that we'll be abandoned.
Yeah.
Or that ultimately addiction is a lot about not getting what we really want in
Correct.
the core of who we are. And we just cover that up with whatever it is, whatever behavior or substance that you're choosing to use to change your mood and your mind, you know?
Correct. Escapism, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Total
Escapism. So I've been to LA several times, all over California, and gone to some beautiful meetings in California. There's such a rich recovery culture in that state, and so many incredible people that are changing their lives. I mean, just great groups.
Yes.
As you move to Tennessee, and I assume continue to access your recovery through meetings and sponsorship and those relationships that you develop, or are there any differences that you noticed as a function of kind of recovery culture in Tennessee and California?
It's, I mean, it depends on how much you immerse yourself, right? And I think you can find what you want when you put the time and energy towards it. But my career, or not my career, but my, you know, some of my stuff has shifted. Again, different strokes, different folks. Like for me, program is very important, and it's something that I instill. And I still go to meetings. I still sponsor people. I still work with a sponsor. But also at the end of the day, I really shifted more towards God. I got much more involved within the church. I got involved into a Bible study. And then I have like a mentor group, basically. It's kind of its own subsidiary of a meeting. And it's what works for me. And we had to make a shift during COVID when all that happened. And it went from going to in-person meetings to there was like 4 or 5 guys that literally we'd meet almost 3 or 4 times a week and go on walks for a few miles on the beach. And that was kind of what it was. And that's what worked for me. You know what I mean? And I really found that. And again, as we obviously had the key foundational principles of recovery and the meetings and stuff that were associated with that. But, you know, for me, it's, I think, again, is what you put into it's what you're going to get out of it. You know what I mean? And so I don't think there's a major shift from the meeting dynamics or things that I've seen here. I think people are a little bit more open in Southern California, or California as a whole, around recovery. Just kind of breaking the barriers, and because I've done quite a bit of work out here for the public, you know, even just doing a PSA that we just recently done for you know, the state of Tennessee, and just seeing people's perception on addiction versus mental health in the South is a little bit different. But outside of that, I think the recovery community is fantastic, and people are very dedicated and motivated.
Yeah, there's some warriors in Southern California, like, you know, with their literature, with their T-shirts, you know, breaking it off.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's a beautiful thing, because I think it just creates a lot more access and identification where somebody can walk in and feel.
Well, I did like to, and that's my whole thing. And that's why I love that you guys, you know, even wanting to be a part of this podcast is, you know, I believe to create systemic change, you have to create the conversation. And it's like, you know, it's being able to talk about it and being able to let people know that there is a way out, you know, be a beacon of hope for those that are lost. And because there's obviously so many people out there that struggle. And again, I'm not saying that you have to break the traditions. I'm not even talking about that.
I know.
Put that in its own corner. I'm talking about the whole other side of it. And it's like the more that you can be open and communicate about that, like, because I just know from my own personal story, everybody got to see the negative for 10 years on TV and everything that I went through and all the different stuff, and to like be able to have the redemption side. You know how many people we've been able to touch, and how many people have reached out for guidance and help, and or relatability, connectivity, a sense of safety, like you said. And so there is profound things that can happen from the other side that needs to be addressed.
Well, I just want to give you credit, because I wasn't on TV for 10 years. I don't know if you know that.
I think you were.
So, you know, you made an intentional decision to put yourself out there that I think it's easy for me to sit back and say more of those people should do that. But I just want to thank you for doing that.
I appreciate it, man.
To make sure that there are some people that feel like, because you've certainly touched at least one life. And if that's the case, it's worth it, you know?
It is. You know, and it's, you know, I mean, I went into something just so blind, you know, and again, I think just from my story, it's like, we had no idea what we were signing up for. You know what I mean? When this all happened, I mean, there was nothing else like it. I mean, Laguna Beach was one of the shows that like revolutionized the way soft scripted reality TV shows were done. That's what created the Housewives. That's what, you know, then the Kardashians come after. It was all these different shows that followed that. And so we really had no idea what it was going to turn into, you know, but again, as you take all that did come with it, and somebody that is struggling at a very young age already with, you know, mental health issues and addiction, it's just adding fuel to the fire, you know, and somebody that struggles with an overinflated ego and an underestimated sense of self-worth.
Let's go.
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
It's a perfect recipe for disaster. Yeah. Like introduce all of that impact and that influence and seeing your face on TV, and what do you think's going to happen?
And you have to remember, there was no TikTok, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. It's either you had cable television or
that's right,
you didn't. You know,
right.
And so that was what the weird thing is. We were like prior to all of that, like that's where you got, I mean, you literally had to go online and like go to perezhilton.com or tmz.com. Like you want to get your information.
Yeah.
And it was just a different time that we lived in.
So what was your mindset when you look back all those years and you think about cameras in your face and following you guys around? I'll confess, I remember, you know, I'm 34, so I don't know exactly how old I was when those shows were coming out, but I remember them coming out, right? Laguna Beach. Was Laguna Beach first?
Yeah, it was Laguna
Somebody's
Beach.
Somebody's got to come at me in the comments, you know, but Laguna Beach was first, and I remember like seeing y'all in your group, just they'd follow you guys around and everything y'all were doing. So do you remember, just as you reflect, what your mindset was, and were you aware at all that addiction was a problem for you? Were you aware at all that perhaps this was something that needed to be reconciled eventually for you?
So, I mean, there's a few different ways I can put this into perspective. You know, like randomly, I'll just share the first one that comes to mind is my wife and I, when Netflix picked up the shows, they just got put back on TV. Like we thought it'd be funny. Like I hadn't watched it in 10 or 15 years. And just to go back and watch a few of the episodes, I was blown away. And I was actually, I randomly, it was 18 years since the show aired. I was just on Access Hollywood and we did an interview, and she's just like, you know, what was your perception? Because we talked about that. And after like knowing what I know today and looking back at what I was going through, I can totally see just how sick and how lost that person was. So what you were really seeing there was somebody that was really struggling. And in that mindset, you have to remember, you know, at 17 years old, 18 years old, you know, we didn't have the knowledge we have today, the understanding, the conceptual piece. And prior to that, I think it's important to understand, before all this even happened, at the ages of 12 or 13 years old, I struggled severely with OCD, to the point where I'd wash my hands till they'd bleed, and I'd have to wear neoprene gloves at night with Neosporin in them. And so I can actually, through all this work, I can see that I struggled with addiction way before I even picked up a drink or a drug. And so at 12, 13 years old, going through this mental health challenge on the outside, living a double life, because I was, you know, I had a lot of friends, popular kid that had, you know, was good at sports, and I would kind of dive into the things that I was good at to deviate from what this was. But then you go into my home and to see these issues that I was struggling with, I was, you know, telling all these different stories within myself. Parents, you know, grateful I had resources and access to be able to try to go get that help. But even then, with all the psychiatrists, all the therapists, being put on an SSRI, understanding a little bit of what that was, it helped mitigate the symptoms, but I never did the work. And then that's what unfolds into addiction down the road, right? And so then there's all these underlying things when this show comes out that I don't know how to process it. Even if I knew exactly what was going on at that, how do you try to explain that at 13, 14 years old? And my parents did the best they possibly could.
Absolutely.
But also being at a place where it's like, today kids are much more effective at communicating, and I can even see that with my 6-year-old. But back then it's like, to my knowledge, I wouldn't even know where to start on how to try to express this. And I even know that I wasn't being completely honest with therapists. I can look back and be like, I don't know what I want to tell you, dude. Who are you? You know, get your little dog in here with us, and I don't know that I want to share anything with you. And it was just it was a tricky environment. So I think going back to like this as a whole, is the mindset that I was in is I was really lost, and I was just trying to feel normal. And so like I was dealing with like the OCD stuff. Again, felt better because of the medications, but then it was like, you know, just all the underlying pieces that come with it. It went into other areas of my life. And so as a kid, you know, at 16, 17, going into it, you know, like you go back to 14 to 15 when I was, you know, started drinking, I was like, this is what I was missing, you know?
Exactly. This feels great.
And so then it kind of, that just obviously, you know, we know addiction, it's primary, it's chronic, it's progressive. And like I said, it just became a thing that was adding fuel on the fire. But by, you know, after Laguna, going to the hills, like, you know, after getting arrested now multiple times, after going to, you know, I went to a wilderness program in Utah, I came back, I went to a boarding school, and then, you know, I started to go to treatment and stuff. It's like, still, even at that age, back then, I was like, dude, I don't have an issue. Like, this is what all 18, 19-year-olds go through. Right. And it's like, also keep in mind, too, it's like at 18, 19, I was being paid to party and like travel the world. Most of my friends are just looking for fake IDs. And so nothing was conceptually easy to digest, and there was nobody that could really relate to it at that time.
Right.
And so it's just kind of you're shooting from the hip. Obviously, some of my other castmates and other people that didn't struggle with addiction, they were able to kind of really figure it out and how to capitalize on that and to move in other areas of the life of success. But when you're in the thick of it, dude, like, you know, I mean, when you're active in addiction, you lose the right to make your own decisions. I mean, your frontal cortex, your executive operating skills, I mean, the way that you operate on a daily basis is non-existent.
I love what you said about mitigate the symptoms but not do the work.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a perfect example of a lot of folks' addiction journey. You know, which makes sense, right? I'm going to treat the symptoms, or I'm going to fix the legal issues, or I'm going to fix the problems with my relationships, but it's usually not until the end of the road, right? What is there left to do, if you will, that we start to sort of reflect, hopefully with people around us.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, that's how I was introduced to recovery. It wasn't a doctor. It really wasn't even a book. It was the identification that I felt with other people that were telling my story, but they looked totally different than me, which is a jarring experience.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? And I think that helped catapult me into really just a little bit of hope. Wait a minute, they're just like me, but they've somehow seemingly managed to change. What's going on here? And maybe that one step at a time, that has led me in towards a life of recovery just for today. As you think about and continue to reflect about your experience on those shows and in your life and growing up in front of a TV camera in a lot of ways, can you talk about or sort of illuminate what it was that helped you get to recovery, what it was that helped you hit that, quote, bottom?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly my moment of clarity. You know, again, as I'll preface that, addiction obviously took everything away that, you know, was important. It takes, you know, all your passions, your purposes away, the things that you love doing, and to isolation. But it also took me not to only contemplating but attempting suicide. And so kind of went down that road that was very, very, very dark. And, you know, I preface, like, on the outside, it's funny because I had everything society says is amazing, whether it was notoriety, access, money, what you name it, girls, you know, and that wasn't enough, right? And again, it's never enough. And so, with all that being said, there should have been multiple times where it's like, hey, okay, maybe this is the time. But the moment of clarity was actually when I was sitting in a therapist's office, yet again for literally the 1,000th time, and my parents were across the way, and we've had multiple meetings like this, but talk about God and just literally a light that just came in during this. But he looked across at me, and I've never seen him break down. And he was like the patriarch of our family, besides when his mother had passed away.
This is your father?
My dad. And he just looked across, and he's just like, Jason, we don't know what to do anymore. You know, I mean, like, and he's had these conversations before, but for some reason this really resonated, and him and my mom, and you know, as a tear comes down his face, he's just like, we're complete loss. Our marriage is suffering. And again, there's codependency there. There's a whole other story with that. You know, the marriage is suffering. The family is just at a complete loss. And mom and I are, you know, lay in bed every single night, like 2 planks of wood, waiting for the phone call that you're dead. And when that happened, there was just a shift, and there was a motivation where I was like, look, I don't care enough about myself. But because of the upbringing, because of what you guys have done, just being amazing parents and stuff, that was a motivating factor where I ended up getting on a plane that next day and went out to Florida. And I went back to treatment for, I think there was like the 12th time at that point. And there was a real shift. And I think that's something I want to share about is because you hear all these people say, like, you have to want it for yourself. And for I'd say as the general consensus, yeah, that's it. But that's not my story. It wasn't for me. It was for other people that then, after acquiring some time, my life started to shift, and I was like, I can see this. I was able to get out of the darkness, and I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And that became my motivating factor. And so, because I run into a lot of people that are, you know, and yes, there's got to be some buy, and every single case is different, right? Sure. There's so much that goes into it, and so much backstory and understanding for that. But for me, it was literally, you know, I owe that to my parents, the upbringing, what I was able to hold on to that, because that became that motivating factor, because I had no fight left. You know, I was done. I experienced a lot by the age of 23, and I was like, dude, okay. But clearly, you know, your greatest deficits can become your greatest assets, and that's where the real journey began, and that's where a lot of stuff shifted for me. And Wasn't over that, it wasn't over yet, but it gave me a completely different perspective. I was able to establish, a purpose and passion and find a life again, and get back to the things I love doing, whether it was surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, wakeboarding, even joining a softball league, go bowling, go golf, you name it. That's the type of person I was. I was very outgoing and I loved doing all those things, but I stopped doing all of them. But I was able to reestablish that. And I ended up getting my first job in recovery after that. I worked with Mike Netherton, who was the president of Betty Ford for 25 years, who was my mentor, and at Northbound with him and Paul Alexander. And
I didn't know you were at Northbound.
Yeah,
okay,
so I started there, and they took me under their wing with 90 days of sobriety. They're like, dude, we're taking a big risk here. And I was like, I'd be worth it, man. And so they took me under their wing, man, and I started as a recovery advocate.
No kidding.
Help people get acclimated and acquainted into detox, helped with marketing. And
tell everybody what a recovery advocate is.
So I helped everybody get acclimated and acquainted at the treatment center. So basically I was like the liaison between the clinical team and the staff, or the clients. And so again, they'd come in, I'd express, what to expect, what to oversee within the program, transitional components that they would be experiencing. And just be a resource for somebody to confide in, I
was going to say, we should shout out all the RAs all over the country,
100%.
The tens of thousands of them that are the backbone of treatment centers, that are there to welcome you, that are there to help you go through the lunch line or whatever, that are there to talk to you when you're smoking cigarette after cigarette or cigarette, wanting to leave.
Crisis management, for sure.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
No, it was incredible because I actually worked with Jimmy, who was, I think Mike says he was like the first ever recovery advocate at Betty Ford, 20 years ago. And so he was kind of my mentor through the process, and ended up developing a whole program through that, and then went into marketing and was there for, 4 or 5 years. And it was incredible though. But that was one of the biggest pieces to my sobriety that I add, like, out of all this, but the purpose that I was instilled by just getting a job and having somebody to report to, and having, to be accountable to somebody, and I had that for so long in my life. Because growing up, as long as I got decent grades and I played baseball, and that was kind of like all I needed to really do. And, and so having that really was a motivating factor. I'm like, wow,
huge.
This is cool. So
it's huge. And being passionate about it.
Yeah.
Like I've had a ton of jobs. Working at a golf course, driving a little cart around, picking up the golf balls was my first job, at a country club, getting smashed to the side or whatever.
Target practice.
Yeah, target practice. But it really does shift in your life when you can find something that really you want to get up and go and do. Yeah. And it sounds like that RA position was the beginning of your journey.
It was. But it gives you perspective too. I think the beautiful thing around that was, again, I know you're not supposed to make that type of work part of your program, but at the end of the day, when you're there every day and you're seeing people come in just completely defeated, it's like, dude, one is I'm very grateful I'm not in that spot, but two, I know where this, as they progress and go through this process, there's nothing better than being able to witness somebody's life transform.
Look, as a person who came into treatment with no esteem, right, as quiet as it's kept, none. People talk about low esteem. I had no esteem. I was not aware because I had that massive ego at the same time, which causes some interesting problems. But I went back. My story was like going back to school, and what school gave me that I think work gave you is some esteem
and identity too.
And identity. They say that by you get self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. Yeah. So showing. I remember. I dropped out of universities many times, right? And I remember calling my sponsor when I started school again in Texas. I was like, I'm going to fail. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm a fraud. I was feeling so different because I was a non-traditional student at 20 because I had dropped out, which, But he was like, what are you talking about, man? Show up early, stay late, sit close to the front, take notes, and ask for help. And I'm like, I don't want to hear this shit right now, But he was right. And then the other thing he told me is like, if you do everything, there's this magical document that they give you at the beginning of every class. It's called the syllabus. Yeah. And if you do everything in the syllabus exactly when they say to do it, you're going to be just fine. And it was just mind-blowing. It's
amazing how that works, right?
I never knew,
Yeah.
So, but it gave me just a little piece of esteem along the way, that maybe being an RA for you and getting into marketing, and then really what you do today, which is able to give back to a larger community through public service announcements. And I kind of wanted you to talk about that a little bit because you've done so much by way of advocacy. You wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, man. It's like there's a lot of stuff that we've got involved in, and I think it's again is when I got out of the way, and just allowed really surrendered to that process and took guidance and direction. It's amazing the things that have unfolded, just through this whole process. Like I tell people, I kind of still have one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat when it comes to media, because I'll leverage and try to utilize that still. Because the Hills came back out in 2019, 20, and 21. So there was just like rebirth, and it created, a little bit of opportunity. But the only reason I ever stay on that is to try to use that as a platform to, again, bring awareness to everything.
You absolutely have. So that's an intentional decision. Just want to give you credit for that.
I appreciate it. But I'm aware of it, and I know that. And it's a great microphone for that. But that's just, this work is just, with how many people, I mean, look, we're dealing with the leading cause of death in America for 50-year-old individuals and younger is substance abuse, right? And I mean, so we're looking at something that is progressively gotten worse over the last 20 years. There's been no plateau in sight. And so, I mean, and more and more people are wanting to learn about this. And unfortunately, in my eyes and all the people that I work with doctors, researchers, and different stuff, where, it's almost kind of like, even when it comes to mental health, we're in this slingshot mentality, because there's still a lot of stuff that's about to happen. You just look at the data, you look at the facts, and so I think people are starting to see and more and more people are talking about it. And so I just think, again, just being a part of the solution, you know what I mean? And whatever opportunities can be a part of that. And so I've casted my net, I work with, Dr. Daniel Amen, which is incredible. And I think even in my recovery journey, working with Daniel now and being the director of their foundation, it's been incredible, because now I'm in a place in my life where I'm wanting to learn more about my mental health. And working with him, after I went and saw him, he was able to identify the OCD in one brain scan that I had with him, that I had pandas, and basically, which is where strep throat attacks a part of your brain that creates OCD. And so, I mean, just knowing that, it would have been amazing to have known that 20 years ago, but to have this knowledge and this understanding, and to continue to deepen my understanding. So a lot of the work that I do is just, it's also a continuation of me getting to know myself better. I love doing the philanthropic stuff, and I love being a part of those processes. And I think it's just, you're a product of your environment, right? And so what you put out there is what you're going to get. And so I've been able to meet and connect with some incredible individuals to instill a shift and to instill change. And, instead of just talking about like one project, I mean, we're doing so many different things. And it's just a blessing to be able to be a part of those types of things.
Yeah. How can we help? How can people that are listening to this help you?
I think, for me, the best way to kind of stay up to date or current is, just my website's jasonwahler.com, or just on Instagram is my form of just kind of like communication with things. Because I don't want to give you a laundry list of just all the different things that we're doing and working on, but it depends, again, different strokes, different folks, whatever one may relate to you, whether it's more mental health, whether it's more substance abuse, whether it's, suicide, you can check those things out, but there's a lot of amazing resources. And I think it's just, you're doing it just by having us here and creating a conversation.
Yeah. There are a lot of really amazing resources in this country, you know, that we're not aware of, like mentioned, Cumberland Heights has been in Tennessee for 57 years, and it should not be surprising, and it isn't. But there's so many folks just in this state that have no idea that we're here. Yeah. And no idea that we can be a trusted partner for your family or you as an individual to make a good treatment decision to try to help you change your life one step at a time. I mean, it's key and critical, and that's really what our work is focused on, is just trying to make sure that people know that we're here.
Yeah. No,
period. Full stop. I told you before the show, like we don't try to get out of our lane. Like, we help people with addiction, and we love it.
Well, that's why you guys have had the success that you've had, and that's why you've had the reputation that you have, and you guys, it's important because you guys are a great resource.
What do you want people to know about addiction recovery? Jason Wahler.
What do I want people to know about addiction and recovery? I mean, I think, for the people that don't understand addiction, for me, like, my message is for especially people that struggle with like opiates or meth or different things. There's no such thing as recreational use of heroin. There's no such thing as recreational use of meth. In my eyes, people have been trying to argue that, or drinking a bottle of vodka a day, right? Like,
using Oxycontin every day that ends in Y is not
normal.
Or
just injecting your neck or your foot, or But when I talk to that, like, on a serious note, it's really understanding, that a person that has to do that is got to be in a very miserable state. Right. And I think it's really important to identify, look, addiction doesn't dictate who we are, but it also doesn't justify our actions. But to have a better, a more sympathetic approach to people that struggle with this, because it is cunning, and it is baffling, it is powerful, and it is a miserable, miserable place to be. I tell people, like, when I first started using it, drinking and using was fun. It became a lifestyle, and it became a way of survival. And it's a survival gene, you know, and when you're active in that, it's a crappy place to be. So, you know, somebody struggling, try to have a better understanding, get a little bit more education around it, and try to approach it with love would be the first thing. And I think that recovery, you know, it really is, it's transformed my life. I've been able to get to know who I am at a deeper level than I ever thought I could have expected. It's allowed me the opportunity to be a husband. It's allowed me the opportunity to be a father. It's allowed me the opportunity to be a good son, a friend, and a family member. And it's allowed me to focus on what's most important in my life, which is about the memories I have, the legacy, the memories that I create, the love that I have, and the legacy I leave behind. And none of that was clear in active addiction. And recovery is changed that, you know. And it's a day-to-day thing, you know. And I think for people in recovery it's important to you know, you have the decision on a daily basis to wake up and either contribute or take away from what it is that you're doing, because no matter the amount of time or what it is that somebody has, we all have, you know, it's just that one day at a time kind of component. And what are you putting into it, and what are you going to do to succeed?
I thought that recovery was going to be all about drugs.
What do you mean?
Well, I thought that, you know, my addiction I thought that I experienced addiction because of the drugs that I was taking.
Yeah.
And come to find out is because the habits that I had formed and a little bit of the mechanisms inside me that were pulling me to change my mood and my mind, right?
Yeah.
That I was uncomfortable in my own skin.
Correct.
And so a lot of the work has really been inside.
Well, dude, yeah, drugs and alcohol aren't the problem. They're the solution, man.
There you go.
100%. You know, I think that's a very important thing to touch on is it's a masking. It's escapism, you know? It's what are we trying to escape from? So.
Yeah. Yeah. And recovery, I thought it was going to be this complex, like, you know, climb on top of a mountain, you know, find some insight that was going to unlock all these issues in my head, right? You know, like that I've got to go, because it's the way we think about medicine.
Yeah.
You know, I need to go seek a professional or take something and it'll fix this broken bone. Yeah. Right. And behavioral health is a process, not an event.
You bring up a great point. I think that's the other thing people need to understand is, you know, somebody that's been going through it 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, for them to go away just for 30, 60, 90 days is, to understand it's more than that. It's very important that they get that help. They, you know, go to a place where they can actively arrest the disease and get stabilized, but it's a lifelong journey. You know what I mean? I mean, you see people with 20 years, 30 years relapse, go back out. Again, I think there's a whole nother conversation on that, but I agree with you. I think it's important to have both sides of the conversation, because it's a lot of, it's for me, it was all internal.
Yeah. 100%, you know, and recovery is all about relationships too. I really loved what you talked about in terms of waking up every single day and making a decision to be a good son or a good husband, or recovery is giving you that opportunity. Yeah. And I think it's all about being, for me, it has tended to all be about being authentic, genuine, and vulnerable. Yeah. And choosing to meet with another man and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable today. Yep. You know, and this is really eating my lunch, and have somebody else say, me too. Yeah. And I know that sounds woo-woo or wonky. It's not, but for anybody listening, that is the core of what we're talking about.
Honesty was the one thing that took me out. You know what I mean? That's period. And the thing that got me back in was honesty. You don't need to make it more complex or complicated than that. You know, I mean, you're talking to a guy that was in a place a long time ago that would be eating a hot dog telling you I was having a hamburger. You know, so it's when I was able to get open and honest after 5 years of recovery, 3 years of relapse, you know, like when I finally got open and honest, you know, it was again an opportunity to do that. But it goes back to that structure and consistency for me, man. I have something that I don't deviate from. You know, I'm not 100% perfect, but I'm pretty damn consistent with it.
That's something else to think. You know, it's not a perfect game. It's not about a perfect game.
It's not. Right? And it's like, it's something I lead people with too. Like even guys I work with, you know, I got to do this. I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week. I'm going to do that. I'm like, bro, I appreciate the ambition and stuff like that. Let's start by just putting your shoes by the front door. You know what I mean? You haven't been in 3 years. Like it's just those baby steps, man, that you're putting into it. But also understand that what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. If you go to the gym 5 days a week, you're going to get the results of going 5 days a week. If you go once a week, you're going to get the results of going once a week. It's the same thing for your recovery. If you go and put effort into it once a week, you're going to get the results of that. Right. You do it 5 times a week or 7 days a week, whatever it may be for you, you're going to get those results. Yeah.
So what do you love the most about being a public figure that talks all about addiction and recovery and puts yourself out there?
Absolutely nothing. Honestly, dude, I feel like I'm just a down-to-earth guy. It was just timing of everything. I'm very grateful for the opportunities to be in the places that I am, to be able to shed light and hope. You know, it's been an incredible experience. You know, it's some very challenging, some awesome things that have come with it. But it wasn't my plan. You know, this is and it was God's plan, and I'm running with it. And you know, it's been a fun journey.
Well, we're grateful to be your neighbor. We look forward to spending more time together. Just the fact that you know Joey, who's on our team now, really excited to get to know you and to get to know more about how Cumberland can help what's happening in Tennessee. I'm just really excited about that. And I got one last question.
Yes. Yeah.
My team would kill me if I didn't ask this, right? But are there any plans for a season 3 of The Hills reboot?
Dude, you know what's funny is there was actually talks of Laguna Beach coming back.
Really? You heard it here first.
But there's a couple people that I love everybody on that, like very close with everybody on that show still. But there's some people that I don't even know if I would do Laguna again. But who knows? Yeah.
What I heard is he wants to do Laguna, and they've signed on. And it's coming out next year. Just
We're
kidding.
Actually filming in Cumberland. They're in the parking lot right now. This is part of the opening.
Yeah.
No.
Well, thanks again, brother. We really appreciate you being here. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Man. Appreciate it.